I recently visited Hiroshima in Japan and stood at the epicenter of a city that remains scarred by the unimaginable horror caused by a single nuclear bomb dropped in 1945, 80 years ago. It's hard for me to find the words to express what I saw, the stories that I heard, the haunting sadness that still remains. This is an experience that will stay with me forever. This attack obliterated the city, killed over 300,000 people, many dying instantly while others died from severe burns, injuries, radiation sickness, and cancer that set in the following months and years. Nagasaki suffered the same fate. Homes, schools, families, all gone in a flash. The survivors, the hibakusha, they carried the pain of extreme burns, radiation sickness, and loss for decades. Survivors of this attack were asked to put in paintings and drawings their own memories and how they felt and what they saw, and those paintings and the suffering that they conveyed, the pain and the sense of loss were almost more powerful than the photos themselves. Yet this one bomb that caused so much destruction on Hiroshima was tiny compared to today's nuclear bombs. The bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima had a yield of just 15 kilotons of TNT, whereas today's nuclear warheads range in size from 100 kilotons to over 1 megaton. A single nuclear weapon today could kill millions in just minutes. Just one of these nuclear bombs would vaporize everything at its core, people, buildings. In Japan, and the epicenter of a city that remains scarred by the unimaginable.
Hi guys, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. As usual, I have no idea what's going on. Good morning, I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. I'm not sure why that video stopped. It was a little bit longer and it was about to get better and somehow it stopped and started all over again, which is really strange. But either way, good morning, Karen. And I wanted to play that because Tulsi Gabbard has talked a lot lately about nuclear weapons, including the possibility that Iran is creating nuclear weapons. We'll get into that in a little bit. But according to Tulsi Gabbard, just as late as March of this year, she said they're not working on nuclear weapons. There's no evidence that they are working on any type of nuclear weapon. Now, is she wrong? Is the intelligence wrong? Are they really working on nuclear weapons and they're just hiding it from us? I mean, most of us think that's probably what's going on, but I don't know. I don't know. We're going to get into that big weekend. I'm so sorry. On Friday, I completely forgot it was Father's Day. I think after my stepfather passed away, my brain is just not thinking correctly, and I kind of had it wiped out of my mind. So this was a big weekend. We had Father's Day. Hopefully, you guys all had a great Father's Day weekend. It was Flag Day. It was President Trump's birthday. It was the United States Army's 250th birthday. It was a major war between, of course, Israel and Iran. We had violent protests that took place all across the country. A lot went on this weekend. It was a very busy weekend. And we're going to get into some of these things. And, we're going to talk a lot about Iran and Israel. And hopefully my videos will play. I was having some technical issues, which is really strange. That's probably one of the biggest frustrations really in radio or podcasting, because I will tell you, in my years in radio, we had a lot of technical issues there too. So that wasn't too unusual. The good part was about radio is that it didn't always happen during your show. Sometimes it happened during the other shows. They'd get it worked out before your show started, or it happened after your show, or so on. Podcasting is different because this is the only show. So if there's going to be a technical issue, it's going to happen during my show, of course. And then I have to work it out, me, somebody who has zero technical knowledge when it comes to podcasting. But I've been making my way through, so it'll be okay. And good morning, Linda. Good morning, Kim. Hopefully, you guys all had a good weekend. I spent most of my weekend out in the garden for the most part, did some shopping, did some other things. I've been so busy with work, I haven't even had a minute to even think. And so my work has slowed down a tiny bit, between now and probably the springtime. So I'm gonna have a little more breathing room. And boy, my garden, it's coming along. I've got a long way to go and I'm really far behind, but it is coming along. I might actually have some tomatoes and corn sometime in October at the rate I'm going. I hope that's not the case. Every year I say I'm going to do it different. Next year I'm going to do it different. And then no, I'm just as busy in the spring and just can't get things done. So we'll see. We'll see. And Beatrice, rainy days for us. Yeah, a lot of, it's pretty overcast today. I know we have like a 60% chance, I think, of rain. I'm right by a window. Not raining yet here, but we probably will get some rain. Some other crazy stuff that went on this weekend that I wanted to talk about. We're going to talk about Vance Boelter, of course, the Minnesota shooter. We're definitely going to get into that because that's a crazy story and it's getting stranger and crazier by the minute. So we're definitely going to get into that. First, two things I want to talk to you guys about first. One is I didn't watch the whole parade this weekend. I just didn't have time. I had to get out and get out into the garden. There was a lot of things I needed to do because of course today is going to be a very busy day, as is the rest of the week. And so I didn't see all of it, but I saw a lot of it. And a lot of people were complaining, saying that it didn't really seem all that patriotic. And of course the liberal news want to say nobody was there. There was, I think, estimated to be about 80,000 people in attendance. And I saw a lot of photos and a lot of video that panned out into the crowd, and I believe every bit of 80,000 people were there. There was a lot of people there. You couldn't see them, of course, through a lot of the video, but they were certainly there. Mary, oh, it's raining at your house, Mary. You're not terribly far from me. Todd says, if the deer don't eat it. Todd, last year I didn't have any problems with deer, but I did have something that was pulling up my corn. I don't think it was deer because they didn't eat it. It just pulled it out of the ground. I'm going to get them this time though, because I'm going to put a camera out there. So we'll get to that. But there was a lot of people who were saying with this, the parade of the army troops, coming through, that they just looked sloppy and they're not in formation and they didn't walk on point. And, we've all seen the videos of the military parades that they have in China or North Korea, which are very well put together. They're walking in step and very precisely walking in step. I don't know if I've really seen a lot of American military parades. We probably don't have as much practice as they do. I mean, we're actually out fighting real wars. Gosh, if I can talk right, real wars. Whereas they're over there, they have nothing to do but march and figure out how to go in march in formation. So I'm going to show a little clip of you. I personally am very proud of the United States Army. And were they absolutely in formation? No, but that's okay. I mean, do they fight better if they can coordinate their arms and their legs while they walk? No, I think they look absolutely fantastic. Good morning, Elizabeth. Good morning, Rob. Mary said, I don't think they wanted people really close for security. I'm sure that's true, Mary, because we know the threat that was, clearly in place for this type of event, not only having our military there, but Donald Trump and other high ranking officials, of course. Good morning, Glasna Kim. That's because the last administration lowered the bar. Kim, isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? They took away a lot of the budget, for our armed services. And not only that, I mean, for me personally, oh, their arms are not moving together. Who cares? I'm going to show you this quick video because I'll tell you what, my opinion, they looked absolutely fantastic. Now, if only I can play the right video. I thought it was a beautiful parade. I don't care that their arms and legs weren't moving in unison. A lot of people complained about the music they didn't like. I think that was probably Trump's choice of music. They thought, oh, they should have a more Russian type marching parade music as they came through. And I thought the music was perfectly fine. And yes, but our military was certainly weakened by the prior administration. And of course, that's something we all have to think about right now because we could find ourselves, quite honestly, right in the middle of a war. We're going to get to that. But I'll tell you, it's something to think about. There's a lot going on in the world right now. We have Russia continuing to advance in Ukraine. They've announced that they have taken the Kursk region. We're not hearing as much about Ukraine other than Zelensky, of course, came out and said, oh, all of this attention on Israel and Iran, nobody wants to give us money anymore. Who's going to start funding us? And I'm hearing that the last of the funding from the United States has been delivered to Ukraine, and there will be no additional military, equipment shipments, no more money, no more financial aid to Ukraine. The last that the Biden administration has approved is done. Now, I hope that's the truth. I think it is. I hope it's true because I'm tired of that situation. I'm tired of it. And we have got to. I know Donald Trump has done everything he can to end the fighting between Russia and Ukraine until we have a regime change in Ukraine. That's probably not going to happen. And that very well may be the situation we find in Iran or in Israel, depending on which side of the fence you're on. And my personal view when it comes to war, any war, doesn't matter that it's Israel and Iran, it really makes no difference. Any war, to me, the people, it's the citizens, the civilians that are the ones who suffer the consequences. Because I'll tell you what, both Ayatollah Khamenei and, of course, Netanyahu and Donald Trump and JD Vance and all of the other leaders all across this world, they all have bunkers. They all have a supply bunker where if we have some type of nuclear attack or other war situation, they and their families will escape. It will be the rest of us who pay the price. Now, I absolutely 100% believe that Israel has the right to defend itself. I also absolutely 100% believe that Iran, under any circumstances whatsoever, should never have a nuclear weapon. They absolutely should never have a nuclear weapon. Now, how far do we go to make sure that they don't have a nuclear weapon or nuclear capabilities? Do we attack them? Do we stop them before they get that far? Good morning, Sherry. And let's see. Todd says, whatever happened to the mineral deal? Are we doing it or not? Todd, I think everything, all the talks between Donald Trump and Zelensky just fell apart, and then everyone just stopped talking about it. I don't think we ever worked out a ironclad mineral deal with Ukraine, and everybody was kind of vying to get in with Zelensky, and I think it all just fell apart. Good morning, Tammy. And I've been watching the war coverage extensively, extensively. I have a lot of great sources, as do most of you, in seeing all of this play out right before our eyes. Iran will launch their missiles. Israel has 12 minutes to take cover, and vice versa. And it's a tit for tat situation, back, forth, back and forth, back and forth. For the past couple of days, that's all I've watched. Iran launching weapon or launching missiles. We have Israel launches missiles. And in the end, of course, all we're seeing is civilians being killed. And I really do think at this point, Israel is going to have to take out every last leader in Iran if he wants to win this war. And if we want to stay out of it, which I do think the majority of us do want to stay out of it, I'd be very curious of your opinions on that. Are you willing to go to war against Iran, or would you rather just stay out of it? For me personally, I don't feel like it's our war. Yes, when it comes to nuclear weapons, it is our obligation as well to make sure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons. But there are strategic ways of doing that versus what we see happening right now. This is a really bad situation. I am sure you've seen the countless videos of Israel, taking some very serious hits. And I've been talking about Iran. I've talked a lot less about Israel, but I've been talking about Iran just because they've always been seen as such a threat to the United States. I've been talking about them for years. And I've talked about their nuclear capability for years. I've talked about their willingness or readiness to go to war also for years. And I know this is not going to be the popular opinion probably with any of you. I don't expect it to be, and I am perfectly fine with you disagreeing with me. But I have always said that Iran will put up a much bigger fight than anyone expects them to do. And I will also continue to say that Iran strikes out in a retaliatory fashion, not directly. Now, I know you guys are going to bounce back and you're going to say, oh, they fight all these wars with proxies and they're the largest sponsor of terrorism. No, the United States is the largest sponsor of terrorism, of course, under Democrat rule. We are actually the terrorists when our country is being ran by Democrats, which is exactly why we fought so hard to vote for Donald Trump, because we don't want to be the world's police. We don't want to be the largest sponsor of terrorism. Now, when it comes to proxy wars, yes, Iran, we know that they've are responsible indirectly for a lot of deaths because they taught a lot of terror groups how to make IEDs, or you can listen to the flip side and they say, well, no, that was actually Americans that taught all of these different terror organizations how to make the IEDs. We may never know the truth about that, but we do know that Iran sponsors Hamas, as did the United States under Obama and under Joe Biden. We know that Iran sponsors Hezbollah, which, by the way, Hezbollah has 150,000 missiles at their disposal, and they are certainly going to get involved as this continues on. Now, we know that Iran sponsors all of these different paramilitary groups that certainly cause a lot of harm, not only to Israelis, but people all across the world. But we, the United States, we've also sponsored these same groups when we saw it fit. I mean, I don't have to remind you guys about Libya, about Iraq, about Syria. I mean, we could take that back, decades where we got involved in other people's business. And not one time have we ever gotten involved with another country and things turned out positive for the people that live in that country. Now, Iran absolutely needs a regime change. They absolutely do. I am 100% for Israel taking out every last one of their military, not military members necessarily, but of their top leaders. I have a feeling the Ayatollah Khomeini has already left Iran. There were a lot of reports that yesterday what happened it was after all the bombing back and forth, Iran, just like Israel did, they completely shut down all their airports. They said no commercial flights in or out. We want the skies to be clear. And then last night, I can't recall what time, might have been about midnight our time. All of a sudden, people were reporting that a 747 left Tehran, and as soon as it left, it went dark. And so a lot of people believe that that was the Ayatollah leaving Iran to escape what would probably be his eventual death. Because guess what? The people of Iran, they don't even support their own government. Most of the Iranians cannot stand the leadership there. We all know that. We've seen the protests. We've seen what they did to their own people. It's absolutely atrocious. But the problem is it until you take them all out, this is not going to stop. As long as the Ayatollah Khomeini is still in charge, then guess what? He's just going to keep reappointing people that have his same beliefs. Now, can Israel or the United States effectively I'm trying to be careful with the words because I know they'll take my show down just very, very quickly if I say the wrong words. Can they effectively unalive the Ayatollah? Now, the story goes that Israel wanted to do this and had the capability to do it, and Donald Trump stepped in and said, no, we're not going to do that. Well, now Netanyahu has said, no, that's not true. I never proposed that we take out the Ayatollah. I don't know what's true and what's not true. It's very difficult for sure. And Todd says, I hear Iran's leadership is at the weakest point in decades. Oh, well, there's no question. Most of them are dead. And Jay says, we are the great Satan, according to Iran. Well, quite honestly, Jay, according to a lot of people, if under Democrat rule, not under Donald Trump, but under Democrats, I would say that the United States is the great Satan, even to us Americans under Democrat rule. Sandy, I hope we stay out of it, but I also would never turn my heart against Israel. I agree, Sandy. Mary, Israel is fighting a war for the world. Yes and no, Mary. I what I really wish they would have done. Now, I'm not a military strategist by any means, but this has been a long time in the making. It's obvious this has been a long time in the making by Israel. And what we can go back, I don't know, decades, as long as I can recall being old enough, to know what politics was, after, of course, Jimmy Carter came in and instilled the Muslim Brotherhood into Iran, and everything changed from them being very free, living very much what we consider a Western lifestyle, to them running around in black burqas. So we did that. That's our fault. I totally understand why the people of Iran hate us. We took away their freedom. We did. Nobody can deny that. And we owe them, the people of Iran, for that reason. And I think we owe them a new leadership. But in the meantime, there are still folks running Iran, launching missiles at Israel, threatening the United States and any country who will side with Israel. And it's escalating, it's continuing to get uglier by the moment. Now, Israel's been planning this for a long time. We know that because what did Israel do? They had operatives inside Iran, allegedly, for a very long time, because these operatives established a drone making area. I don't know what you want to call it. I wouldn't call it a factory or manufacturer because it was an apartment, but they were in an apartment in Iran creating drones, creating car bombs, etc., different types of explosives, I should say. And they have carried out those attacks. These operatives came out, they car bombed. I can't remember how many car bombs there were, but I know they, through car bombs, killed 14 nuclear scientists, I believe, in total, is what I was reading early this morning. And of course, the drones, and Iran shot down a few of the drones, but they were also very successful in also taking out a few of Iran's top leadership. So we know that Israel was planning something against Iran for quite some time. Is it about nuclear weapons, really, or is it just about the fact that I think we can all agree their leadership needs to change? It's very possible that Israel, maybe even the U.S. I kind of doubt it under Biden, because we know that Joe Biden, we know that Barack Obama supported Iran. Remember that big pallet of cash they delivered to them? But I know that Israel has been planning this for quite some time. And it's so hard for me because I hate war. I don't want to get involved in war, but I do wish they would have been more strategic in planning and somehow taking out the leadership without having to lob these missiles back and forth, which does nothing, of course, but harm the collateral damage, which is, of course, us civilians. And Jay, it's very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I agree, Jay, but I'm not really convinced that they were very close to having a nuclear weapon. I mean, we've been saying this for a really long time. And John says Israeli actions and timeline suggest the war was a decapitation attempt, followed by U.S. topping Iraq. Same storyline, similar strategy. John, that those are the words of the day. I agree 100%. It's about a regime change. It is not about nuclear weapons. This is about a regime change, and one that I personally welcome. I welcome a regime change. If somebody told me from day one that Israel is going to attack Iran because they need a regime change, I've been like, okay, I get it. Let's do it. But when they were talking about nuclear weapons, I'm like, I don't think Iran is very close to having nuclear weapons. And I'm going to show you this quick clip. My videos aren't doing too well today, of Tulsi Gabbard telling us exactly this. They are not a threat when it comes to nuclear weapons. So this is about a regime change. Keep that in mind. And we should welcome a regime change.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader
Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
Now, you can believe Tulsi Gabbard or you don't. That's up to you. Yeah, that's up to you. John Wick says every 2 to 5 years, we hear Iran will have nukes. In 2002, we were told Iraq would have nukes. Fool me once. I'm 100% with you, John Wick. I was looking at a timeline yesterday of every time we warned that Iraq was going to have nuclear weapons. I mean, Iran, I keep saying Iraq, that Iran was going to have nuclear weapons. It reminds me of the old story that Iraq had mass weapons of destruction. Do you remember that? No, they didn't. We attacked them, but it was really about a regime change. Remember that? It's the same old story. It kind of reminds me of Hollywood movies. They just keep rewriting the same old story. And that's exactly what is happening here. Now, how far are we willing to support a regime change in Iran? Completely get it out of your head that this is about nuclear weapons, because it 100% is not. Now, of course, Israel is going to bomb the nuclear facilities first. They got to put up a good show, understandably. But then, of course, their real target was taking out the leaders of Iran, of the Iranian regime, as it should be. I don't disagree with that at all. But what I hate to see is of course, there's so much civilian casualties. I don't know if Israel really expected to receive the destruction and casualties that they have. I think that they probably thought their Iron Dome would be a little bit more protective. But what you have to remember is here we have Iran. They have these 20, 30-year-old missiles. They started out this conflict with they allegedly 3,000 missiles, ballistic missiles. And of course, they're using those first. Every once in a while, you see one of those, I don't know, Fatah, I believe is what they call them, hypersonic missiles come through. But the rest of them, 20, 30-year-old missiles. But they've got some good missiles in their arsenal that they have not brought out yet. And so people want to say, well, Iran, they're an easy target. They are not an easy target because they have this large stockpile of missiles. They're backed by Hezbollah, which has 150,000 missiles, by the way, that are absolutely in proximity to Israel. And then we have the Houthis who are going to jump in the mixer. They've got a lot of these paramilitary groups behind them, not to mention that they have the whole of BRICS standing behind them. So I don't think that it's going to be as easy as what it was. However, now this is just my personal viewpoint. Again, you may or may not agree with me. I personally think that countries like Russia or China, some of the other BRICS member countries, I personally think they would welcome a regime change in Iran. Now, they have taken in Iran as a member of BRICS for strategic reasons, but I'm sure even they realize that the government in Iran does not serve the people. They know that they support terrorism. So I would seriously think that Russia right now, Putin's probably saying, okay, this isn't about nuclear weapons. This is about a regime change. Let's just sit back and let the Israelis do it. And then if they go too far, then we'll step in. And let's see here. Jay says ballistic hypersonic missiles aren't what the Iron Dome was designed for. Yeah, and Iran has that Ahmad missile, and they haven't launched any of these Ahmad missiles yet. It's a newer missile, and if they do, Israel will be completely incapable of gosh, I just cannot talk today, preventing a strike from this Ahmad missile. And let's see here. John says, did Israel release a deck of cards on top of Iranian leaders to take out? U.S. did that with Iraq. I have a deck of those cards. Probably so. And John says, but Israel did not hit the deep nuclear labs and facilities in that first 48 hours. Maybe Trump was supposed to be Samson optioned into those attacks, possibly. Yeah, I think when the attack first started, they hit that first nuclear facility 3 times, I heard, trying to break through the concrete. And I can't recall how many nuclear facilities Iran has. I think 4. And I believe 1 was damaged and 3 were not. But here's what Iran is good at. I'm going to show you a video of this. And part of their strategy is that they faked out Israel, and they were using. I don't know what my problem is today, but I can't. I feel like I've had like a stroke or something. I can't talk and I can't think straight. But they were using fakes. They were using decoys. Decoys is the word I'm looking for, and they know that that Israel. Gosh, I am a mess today. That Iran knows that Israel uses has radar seeking capabilities, and so, therefore, what they did is they would put out all of these decoys. They would put a radar type of machine inside of their decoy. And of course, Israel did strike those decoys. I've seen countless videos of it where they're doing this. And hopefully, what worries me with the Iranian regime is that, yes, they're putting these vehicles out there as a decoy. They look like launchers, expecting Israel to attack them. And then, of course, they launch a counterattack. And Iran has successfully shot down, last I heard, was about 5 F-35s using these decoys primarily, which I think is pretty interesting. And I'm going to show you a video of that. Mary says, I remember what James Wood said after 9/11. The only way to deal with the enemy that wants you that dead is to get them deader first. Sorry, Mary, you had that spaced out, I know, to avoid the algorithms. And let's see here. I'm going to show you this decoy video really quick. This is a decoy. This is not a real missile launcher. And a little after this video, and the reason why I'm showing that video, not too long after that video, of course, Israel did strike that decoy. And I have other videos of it completely burned out, but it was not a real missile launcher. But I'm also going to show you a video of this hypersonic missile. Now, something we'll talk about, not today, because we've got too many other things to talk about in such little time, because I do want to talk about Vance Boelter as well. Boelter. I'm never going to get it right today. And I don't remember what I want to talk about, but we'll figure it out. Let's see here. I wanted to show you a video of one of these hypersonic missiles. That's striking an apartment complex within Israel, of course. I've got another video of one here. These things are fast. I'm gonna show you that again for a reason. I want you to look at this very, very closely. You know what that reminds me of? This is what I was going to say that I would like to talk about on a day that's not today when we have a little bit more time. Remember that Philadelphia plane crash that time? They had that medical plane. Remember how that came just flying through, and everybody said that looks like a missile. That does not look like a plane. I went back and watched that video, and I'm going to play that maybe tomorrow if we have time to show you the similarities between this hypersonic missile and how that comes down striking and the explosion afterwards and that medical plane. I'm kind of starting to agree with the people who said that that medical plane was actually a hypersonic missile. Now, where, how, who, I don't know. But if you go back and even look at the crater from that plane crash, it looked like a missile strike. It is pretty crazy to think about those things, but we'll talk about that on another time, another day. But those hypersonic missiles are pretty severe, and they're doing a lot of damage. You know, there's a lot of people in Israel who are saying that, gosh, you know, they're wanting to make us look like Gaza. They're trying to destroy our infrastructure, and it makes sense because the Ayatollah said, in fact, this was just, I don't know, a couple of months ago, he said that if Israel ever attacks Iran, they are going to make sure they destroy all of their infrastructure. And to me, it appears that's exactly what they're doing. Now, where I have to draw the line, excuse me, is all these civilian casualties. Now, you're never going to get well, I shouldn't say never. It's very difficult to get an actual report of how many people have died. Now, we know that Iran has, I heard yesterday, 244 deaths. Today, I heard it was closer to 300 and something with, you know, nearly 1,000 injured. You're never going to know the true story. And then, of course, we have Israel. Yesterday, they said they had about, I think it was 24 deaths. Today, I heard that number is a little bit higher from strikes overnight. There were some strikes this morning as well, just when I was getting ready to start the show, that seemed to be successful. So, of course, those numbers are going to climb. we saw, I'm going to go back and show you this video again of this apartment complex being hit because it is absolutely devastating. And now I can't tell you if it's true, but they said people we've seen a whole side fall off there. Now I read reports that there were people inside of that complex when it was destroyed. Now, is it true? Is it not? I don't know because there's so much propaganda that goes on all sides. We saw the propaganda with Ukraine and with Russia, of course. It happens in every single conflict. And it's not going to be any different here because that's, of course, part of the strategy. Now, what I thought was interesting about this, I posted on a little bit about this on Facebook yesterday, was the attacks tit for tat going after civilians. And to me, it seems it seems intentional. And then I thought, well, it can't be intentional. Somebody even posted on my Facebook page, surely this would not be intentional. Israel would not intentionally strike civilians. And of course, we all know that most countries house military operations in civilian areas, kind of undercover. And of course, Israel does. Of course, Iran does. Of course, the United States does. Everyone does. And quite honestly, believe and will always believe that us people were just pawns, in this giant game, giant war game, and we are just collateral damage. I don't think any country cares about us. I don't care if it's Israel or Iran or quite honestly, even the United States, if they think it's for national security or for the better. Look at 9/11 if you want to get a good example of being okay with casualties. And again, another topic we can talk. Lori says, please disregard my stupidity, but what is the difference between a missile strike and a full born wall? Lori, I don't know either because I don't know what a full born wall is. So I'm not sure. Did I say that? Like I said, I feel like I've had some kind of stroke today, which I haven't, but I've been awake since 3 o'clock in the morning. I kind of feel like it. Todd Bodecker, let's see here. So much AI video as well. Yeah, I think the videos that I've mostly seen have been real videos, just because they're taking a lot of this video from Gaza. They're taking a lot of it in Iran. A lot of it in Israel. I just can't get my country straight today. Mary says, "Where will the civilian in Iran or Israel go, who have their places destroyed?" Israel launched a campaign to tell Iranians leave Tehran. And, you saw countless vehicles, traffic completely backed up. But what was interesting about that is some videos and some commentators said, oh, look at all the people leaving Tehran after that Israeli warning. Then other people said, no, I am in Iran. Those are actually people going to Tehran because they're commuting for work. This is just your typical traffic that people are just going about their day. And I don't know if this is true or not true. There's only so much, of course, we can discern without being there ourselves. But I do know there has been a lot of civilian situations, and understandably, as a matter of fact, it was almost kind of a joke last night with Iran, which did bother me because Iran struck. It wasn't this apartment building; it was a different one earlier in the conflict, and they released a photo that showed fighter jets, on each of the floor of this apartment building. And you can go and you can look at the footage of that apartment building that was struck. There's certainly no fighter jets there. It's not a military complex that you can see unless it's underground. And I really think that I think Iran intentionally is striking civilian targets. I really do. I think they're doing it absolutely with intent. I think they're trying to harm civilians in Israel. But then Israel, they're not exactly being very discriminatory. I mean, at first their strikes were extremely precise, a lot of precision there. But since that time, they have also struck residential areas, probably in retaliation for what Iran is doing. And of course, we had the car bombs, which was devastating to a lot of neighborhoods and also resulted in a lot of civilian casualties. I was watching that video I put on Facebook of it was like an appliance store, appliance city, it said. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't a cover for some kind of government, operation, but one of the Israeli missiles hit the parking lot of Appliance City, and there's people everywhere. I think at the end of this, we're going to find out there's a lot more civilian casualties than what we think. Oh, I'm sorry, Lori. So she said, please disregard my stupidity, but what is the difference between a missile strike and a full-blown war? Well, I would consider this to be a full-blown war, quite honestly. between Israel. Some people want to call it a conflict. I think we're well past the stage of it being a conflict. And I think that Israel is going to have to up the ante. Now, Israel is much more prepared. They have certainly held restraint, and they can certainly, strike Iran in a much harsher way. They've got submarines. Of course, they've got, yeah, jets, fighter jets. They have ships. There's a lot of ways they can reach out and really hurt Iran. They have not done so yet. Israel is taking a lot of casualty. They're losing a lot of infrastructure. There's a lot going on over there. And I think we're going to see how things escalate. I think right now, Iran is probably contemplating what their next move is. Are they going to bring out the heavy missiles? They've been launching these, again, 20, 30-year-old missiles, and then every once in a while they'll throw in one of these hypersonic ballistic missiles in between, but they have not yet launched the good stuff, and I think they're trying to show restraint as well. And then Israel, we know Israel could wipe them off the face of the map at any second, and obviously have not done so. So we'll see how things play out. I'm sure Israel is thinking, hey, if we're not careful, we're going to get bricks, on our tail. And we, the United States, that's a whole other story. Donald Trump keeps saying, as a matter of fact, Donald Trump has told all of the US military bases in every country to make sure they put the word out that we are not part of this strike against Iran. Make sure people know we are not part of this. And I think that's kind of telling to me. Donald Trump is telling us, oh, we're not going to be part, we're not going to join in. But yet, those are his words. His actions tell a completely different story. We have aircraft carriers on the way to the Middle East. We have many ships, destroyers, and so on heading to the Middle East. There's a lot of activity today. And some people were saying, well, that's because of those exercises taking place in Finland. Well, they're not heading towards Finland. So that's not the case. We are certainly getting ourselves in a defensive posture. And let's see here. Mary says they may need that big plane to carry it. It's a B-52 that carries 30,000-pound bunker busters. And Jay says Iran is huge. It's bigger than Alaska. There's a lot of ground to cover. Yeah, and Israel is obviously quite small, and it doesn't take a lot for these missiles to truly affect Israel. And I think that Israel wasn't quite expecting the barrage that they've received. And let's see, nuclear bombers hit by Ukraine days before peace talks. Now Israel attacks Iran days before peace talks. Yeah, they're all meeting it for the G7 today. I just cannot talk today. I probably just need to go back to bed and start the show over. And yeah, there's a lot going on. Todd says, does Israel possess a MOAB bomb, mother of all bombs, if you guys remember that one, that can go through the mountain to take out their stuff, or will we have to do it? Todd, I think we have to do it. I don't think Israel has one of those. I was kind of looking through their arsenal weapons and that. I didn't see anything quite like that. And I think that is why when they first launched that first initial strike, they had to hit that nuclear facility 3 separate times trying to break through that concrete, and they never really did. So I don't think they have the capability of doing that without launching something very serious that's going to obviously make Russia and, BRICS, China, and everybody else jump in. And kind of speaking of that, we'll see how things go tomorrow. If you had to ask me today how I see things going, I think this is going to be a very serious situation. I don't think it's going to stop. I don't think Iran signing any kind of nuclear deal is going to stop what's happening right now. I really don't. I don't think this is about nuclear weapons to begin with. I don't think this is going to stop until there's new leadership in Iran. And I do think the United States is going to get involved. How and in what capacity, I don't yet know. I do think Russia is going to get involved. Russia notified their embassy in Israel to evacuate. They have asked all Russian citizens to leave Israel immediately. And it's going to be difficult to do because Netanyahu yesterday also closed down the airports and said there will be no commercial flights in or out, which was pretty disappointing, I think, to some Israelis, because there were rescue planes that were supposed to come today and take a lot of these people. A lot of people in Israel have second homes, here in the United States, other countries around the world, and now they're not able to leave. So I'm sure that's got a few people a little worried and upset. And let's see, Jay says they will do what they need to do, protect our assets in the region. You know, I think that Donald Trump is it going to do exactly that, Jay? I think the way I understand it, the way I see it, is that Donald Trump knows we didn't vote for war. In fact, we voted him in because we don't want war. We don't want to be the police of the world. In fact, we want to stay out of this conflict. We want to stay out of them all. We don't want to send our sons and daughters to go and fight their war games. Unless, of course, we are attacked first. That's a whole different story. And then we got to start thinking, okay, we are going to get involved in this. It's pretty obvious that Donald Trump's going to do what he has to do to protect national security. He's going to do what he has to do to protect Israel. Right now, we're in a defensive posture, but that's probably going to change. Iran is not going to stop sending these missiles over to Israel. They're not going to stop. They're absolutely not going to stop. And at some point, it's going to escalate. And unless somehow these operatives inside Iran are able to take out all of the leaders, dismantle those nuclear facilities, this is not going to end anytime soon. And then we're going to have to start talking, well, how does this affect us? And, I'm going to reach out to Colonel Joe Adams after the show and see if maybe he wants to join us tomorrow. By the time I thought about it last night, it was a little too late to ask him to come on today. But I might see if he wants to join us tomorrow while things are all hot and heavy still, and see if he wants to give an opinion on how he feels, where this is going. And we'll know more by tomorrow, too. Because as I said, as I was heading into the show, Iran had just launched another barrage of missiles towards Israel. And if this continues, there's not going to be much of Israel left to protect. And it's pretty serious situation. John Wick says Israel does not have the MOABs. Israel bunker busters are 5,000 pounds, whereas U.S. MOABs are 30,000 pounds. Thank you for that, John. That is something I did not know. And Jay says you have to do something. You can't fly planes with missiles in the air. And then Jay says it's being reported Israel controls Iranian. Well, they do control Iranian airspace. But you know what? They've been controlling Iranian airspace since the beginning. And it does not matter. It's not stopping Iran from launching these missiles. In fact, Israel has destroyed 1/3 of Iran's missile launchers. Now they're going to have to disable all of them. And thankfully, they have enough operatives in the country to probably carry that out. But it's going to take some time. And how much damage is Iran going to do in the meantime? And today, as we move into the day, it's going to get a lot uglier because Iran announced this morning that those people I was talking about, those operatives who had the apartment in Iran, who were making the drones and attacking the nuclear scientists who set off the car bombs, well, they caught a few of those guys and they've executed one, and they plan to execute the others as well. And that's going to not ring very well, of course, with Israel. So we're going to see a lot more happen today, a lot more tomorrow. I don't see this ending anytime soon. And we got to start thinking, how is it going to affect us here in the United States, which we'll talk more about tomorrow, because we're going to wait and see how things escalate. I'm not doing anything different, going about my day as usual. But as we know, things can escalate fairly quickly. And I think that Donald Trump, either today or tomorrow, is probably going to make an announcement that we are going to be more directly involved. I absolutely expect that to happen. And France, vowing they're going to get involved and, of course, being an ally of Israel. We have Trump attending an emergency meeting at the Pentagon today to talk probably exactly that. What is our involvement going to be? So we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. Mary said, didn't part of our embassy get hit? Maybe you already discussed. No, Mary, I hadn't discussed that yet. Our embassy in Tel Aviv, Iran launched, of course, another missile, which came very close to the embassy. Now, I think it may have destroyed part of the grounds of the embassy. I don't, at least the last report I saw, it didn't hit the embassy building itself. But that's going to happen. It's a very serious situation. If you look at the photos of Israel right now, and exactly, I think it was Jay that said, how large Iran is versus how small Israel is. And you have Iran launching, they've launched over 1,000 missiles at this point. And I think their strategy is just to keep sending these barrages of missiles over. The Iron Dome just can't keep up. And pretty soon it's not going to be able to keep it up at all. It's going to be completely obsolete if this continues for much longer. And I think they think, well, even if only one or two of 20 missiles, hits a target, for being such a small area, it's going to cause a lot of destruction. And I feel like that's their strategy. That's exactly what they're doing. Netanyahu right now is probably wondering what he got himself into. He's probably wondering how far can he go because he cannot allow these attacks to continue. How far can he go without getting all of BRICS on him, on us? We've got to be very careful, very, very careful in this situation. Sandy says gas prices have already went back up, but I'm sure they will teeter up higher. And I'm kind of confused by that, Sandy. I was seeing people saying, oh, go get your gas. I think Iran, what do they control? 15% of the world's oil supply. It's not even that high of a number, and I don't know. For us personally, we under Donald Trump, we'll be using our own oil reserves, of course. We shouldn't have to worry about it too much. Mary says gas prices, everything transported will go up. And Charles, let's pray Pakistan doesn't get involved. They will, Charles. Pakistan absolutely will get involved. Iran called for this morning, early this morning, late last night, for all Muslims to rise up against Israel. And that's probably going to quickly change to against Israel and the United States. And I think it's going to be a very serious situation we're going to face because we'll talk more about this tomorrow. But we know here in the United States, what do we face here? We have the Democrats who let 21 million illegals into our country. And those are the ones we know about. What about the people who snuck through we don't even know about? We know there are Iranian sleeper cells here in the United States, lots of them. I read a report one time that there's over 1,500, right here in the United States. And there's probably a lot more than that. And we also know that we have people probably in this country manufacturing drones that could be used to attack us, IEDs used to attack us. We know that an IED showed up at one of the protests, and so we know it can show up just about anywhere. And so that's something to think about. We're going to have to start thinking about our infrastructure. What will we do if they attack our power supply or our water supply? Or a lot of other things that let's just not get into quite yet. Hopefully this situation will simmer down and we don't have to talk about those what if scenarios. We'll know a lot more about that tomorrow. Mary says, but they use it as an excuse to raise prices. That's exactly what it is, Mary. They use it as an excuse because Iran, I'm almost positive it's 15% of the world's oil supply. Shouldn't be enough to make a difference, and of course, we have a situation where Israel has struck one of their largest petroleum facilities. And then, of course, Iran struck Haifa, where they took out the power grid in Israel. It's a big tit for tat, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's going to continue today. It's going to get uglier. It's going to escalate more. We're going to see how far Netanyahu is willing to go, how far the United States is willing to go, how soon we jump in. I think it's going to be quite soon. We'll see how it all works out. We'll definitely talk more about it tomorrow. And, if we end up in a situation where Iran starts launching those larger missiles, it's going to get ugly very, very quickly. But they're not going to do that until, of course, they run out of those old 20, 30-year-old missiles. They'll do what they're doing now, and they're just going to, send those hypersonic missiles in kind of here and there because those do deliver, quite a powerful strike. And I almost feel like they're launching, let's say 20, 30 missiles, 50 missiles at one time. And then, a couple of them, of course, make their way through. Then you see that hypersonic missile, fly by. It's almost like they're trying to detract from the attention then, of course, with the other missiles. And they launch that big one in there. So we'll see how it works out. I'm a little worried about it. I think that's part of my problem why I can't talk right today, because I literally cannot talk right or think right today. Or it could be just because I haven't slept in days. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. And of course, I'll be posting on social media and keeping you guys up to date. I know I'm running way over my time today because there's just so much to talk about. Something else I wanted to talk about is that situation with Vance Boelter, the shooter in Minnesota. That is the craziest story that is unfolding before our eyes. Of course, he was finally apprehended yesterday in Sibley County, very near to his home. And I don't know if I can pull this picture up for you or not, because my system doesn't do well with photos, but I'm going to do my best to try. Take a look at this guy. Now, this is the mask he was wearing. Now, here's what's interesting is I thought at one of the homes they had coverage of him wearing that hat and that same coat that you see him there on the left side of the screen. So did he change in between homes or did he have this mask on the entire time? I'm going to leave that up there so you guys can take a look at that a little bit better. This is such a weird story. And of course, we know that he went to the home, of course, of Senator John Hoffman and his wife, I believe her name is Yvette, shot them both seriously injured, left, went to the home of course, Minnesota House Leader Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, who were both shot fatally and killed. Sandy says, oh, thank you, Sandy. I'm doing my best. If I can just talk, things would be a lot easier. So I think this is such a weird situation. And it started out strange from the beginning. Because if you think about it, in the very beginning, officers responded to Hoffman's home, saw that he and his wife had been shot, very seriously injured. And they immediately thought to call and have somebody go and check on Melissa Wortman's home. And sure enough, officers arrive, or a officer arrived, and here they see the shooter there. He's there. His vehicle's in the driveway. He's there. He's just leaving the house. He just went in and shot Mark and Melissa Vortman and left Hortman. And I think that's odd. Then he ran back into the house, escaped out the back door, not to be seen again until yesterday when he was apprehended very near his home. And then and he had a vehicle. So he obviously went back home, got his vehicle, and then left again. His vehicle was left in an intersection. He escaped out into the woods. He was caught because somebody saw his vehicle and he left his cowboy hat. That same hat you saw him wearing in that photo, he left that hat on the ground next to the vehicle in the middle of an intersection. So, yeah, that's going to draw some attention. It's a weird case. And of course, he was spotted by a drone. He was told to surrender, which he did. Very crazy situation. Then you hear the story about his wife, Jenny, was attempting to escape with their children. And here Jenny has a gun, she has a weapon, she has ammunition, she has allegedly $50,000 in cash and passports. Where was she going? Where was she going? Instead of being at home thinking, oh my God, I can't believe my husband did this, she had packed up the kids. How did they? Apparently, he was having financial struggles, is what we're led to believe. How did he have $50,000 in cash laying around the house for her to grab and take? There's so much more to this story. And Dottie, did they find the mask? If they did, I haven't heard about the mask. But a lot of people are talking about that mask. And I can't even imagine what this was like for these two Democrat leaders, Minnesota representatives, waking up in the middle of the night and here's this guy at your door. That mask is frightening. It's not one of those masks. It looks like realistic. It's frightening. It's a crazy situation. Jenny herself, of course, Bolker's wife, she worked also for Waltz, Minnesota Governor Waltz, which is also really strange. Just the connections are strange. The whole case is really strange. And I know that Boelter, I was kind of looking at this earlier, some of the things that he did. He obviously had this planned for quite some time. This is not new. And I don't know if you guys saw the video of his housemate. Like, why does this guy have a housemate? Which I'm going to play a video from that too, which is really strange. This guy works at Papa John's. Somehow he lives, and of course, Boelter's a married man, been married for a long time, has kids. How does this roommate come into play? Why does this guy live with him? Do they live in a separate residence? It doesn't make sense to me yet. And of course, Boelter claiming he's a doctor. I guess he has a PhD. I don't know. And that he's the CEO of Red Lion Group and Praetorian Group Security, which is really weird because I've heard of Praetorian. I own a security company, but I don't think that's why I've heard of Praetorian. I'm going to do some research and figure out why do I know that name? because I know the name of that security company. I know it, and I just, for the life of me, can't figure out why. And I'm going to have to go back and do some research to figure out exactly why. Mary says, and the guy's roommate part time. Yeah, it's a weird situation. I hope that this video uploaded because I didn't have the best luck with my videos today. Here it is right here. We're going to take a look at this. This is so weird. And I'll tell you what, I have no doubt that this guy knew exactly what Boelter was planning. You know how I know? Because if you listen to this, he says, I don't know how many times in this video and in other videos, well, we didn't know. We didn't know. He says we didn't know. I'm like, seriously, how dumb do you think we are? Take a listen to this.
He was thinking.
Okay, can I? Yeah.
He was, you know. David and Ron, I love you guys. I made some choices, and you guys don't know anything about this, but I'm going to be gone for a while. Sorry. Baby's dead shortly. So I just want to let you know that I love you guys both. And I wish it hadn't gone this way. I don't want to say anything more and implicate you in any way. Because you guys don't know anything about this. But I love you guys, and I'm sorry for all the trouble this has caused.
Who was the other recipient?
Ron Ramsey. It's another friend. He doesn't live in the state.
Got it.
And he's going to move up here.
So you two were his two best friends?
Yeah.
Is there a photo of your phone screen left here?
Yeah, I just don't want Jenny seeing it splashed on the...
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't run it big, but I mean, just
Yeah, it's all right.
Okay, so I'm not going to play that whole video, but this guy goes on and he mentions again, I don't know how many times, we didn't know, look at, all he said in the message is, well, we didn't know. You guys didn't know anything. Oh, they definitely knew. I think they definitely knew. And Sandy says, were they lovers? Sandy, I'm wondering that too. It is a very strange situation because, now I could see a man telling his best friends, oh, I love you. I'm leaving. I'm not going to be back. Maybe I can understand a good friend also being devastated like this. I've lost friends and it is devastating, and especially in such a horrific way. But this is a weird situation. Why does this guy live with Vance Boelter? Why do they live together? Do they live with his wife? Is the wife, live in a different residence? I don't understand what's going on here. It's the strangest case. And John Wick, I am 1,000 times with you. You said Vance Boelter. How did police know to engage him at the state senator's house so quickly? That's what I would like to know too, because I'll tell you what, if I'm arriving on scene and I see that a state senator has been shot and his wife has been shot, and I'm calling for emergency vehicles, this is an investigation. I don't know, and maybe I just wouldn't make a good investigator, but I don't think, and of course I realized maybe it was in the manifesto. So far they have told us that they cannot release the manifesto because there's not enough information in there. They really don't know anything. The only thing I can guess, John Wick, is that in that manifesto, he had a list and it said he was going to her house next. That is the only thing I can think of, because I don't think this guy could have guessed, this police officer could have guessed that quickly to just randomly send him there. Now, we know he had the manifesto. We know he had the signs that said no King's Day on them. And a lot of people were saying at the very beginning that he was probably upset because we know for sure that, of course, Representative Melissa Hortman voted against healthcare for illegals. But why would this guy care about that? Why would he be so deranged about that happening? Now, I'm going way out on a limb here, way out on a limb. I almost feel like it was a hit. Am I the only person that feels that way? And it was, and this guy never expected to get caught, because before they found out who he was, remember, they were saying this was a professional. Whoever did this was a professional. He executed these people with precision. I think that he never expected to get caught. But I don't know. I almost think that he left the manifesto and all of this other stuff behind. Well, you know what? Let me backtrack a little bit. He didn't leave the manifesto at Hoffman's house. He left the manifesto at Hortman's. I'm kind of thinking this out. And so that then let's backtrack a little bit. It does make you wonder in that case, how did he know to go? How did the officer know to tell officers to do a wellness check at the Hortman residence? Because that's true, John Wick. They did not leave. He left the manifesto and the no king sign at Hortman's house, not at Hoffman's house where he was first. I don't, we'll probably never know, like so many other things that happen, but I personally think that these were hits. He was a hit man. They hired him to do this. He got caught. How else did he have $50,000 that his wife was on the run with? I bet you anything somebody came to this guy and said, "Hey, I'll pay you $50,000 or more if you carry out these hits against these individuals, and if you make it look like it's a Republican, if you make it look like it's a Republican, and make it look like you're a real police officer, or something along those lines." And I don't think he expected to get caught, and he did. Will he talk? Probably not. I don't think this guy would have came up with $50,000 otherwise, because all we've been told and all we've heard is that he was struggling for money, that he was working all these different jobs, because he was struggling for money. So if that's the case, how did he come up with $50,000 in cash, which his wife had? Why did she know to, attempt to leave the country? Because that's what she was trying to do. Again, just a crazy situation. Dottie says, we only know what they are telling us. You got that right. Mary says they showed bullet holes in the door. Why wouldn't the neighbors hear it? Well, they said he was a professional. I haven't heard anything about a silencer, but I'm assuming that that's what he used, because no one heard any gunshots that I've heard as of yet. And let's see, John Wick, Waltz knew, politically motivated. Waltz has ties to shady characters. He does. Not only that, but he has said he has ties to shady characters. Remember that weird comment he made a while back where he said, "Oh, I know shooters." And I've got a video of that. I'm going to play that tomorrow. He's a weirdo. And let's see here. In my opinion, Waltz should have been an initial suspect, had ties to the shooter. Motive, the math doesn't add up. You got that right, John Wick. Mary says, Dems, may you unalive him. Dottie, he will probably get rubied. Yes, probably. Mary, unalive, yes. Yes, I was wondering what you're saying, unalive. Yeah, that's a weird situation. As of now, I'm going to stick to my theory that I think that he was paid to carry out these acts. Who paid him? I don't know. Was it Waltz himself? Somebody Waltz knows. Did Waltz connect these people together? Because both Boelter and Boelter's wife, Jenny, worked for Waltz. They knew him personally. And Waltz probably was completely unglued, absolutely unglued over Hortman voting against healthcare, free healthcare for illegals. He was probably losing his mind, which, by the way, I saw a photo of old Waltz yesterday, standing somewhere. It looked like a fast food place in jeans and high heels. I mean, hey, to each their own, to each their own. But I wouldn't be surprised if he were tied to this. We'll probably never know. And right now, Donald Trump has got his hands pretty darn busy saving this country from Iranian assault. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I'm way over my time. We'll have a lot more information tomorrow to talk about all of this. We're going to see how things play out today. And, now, while I was playing that video for you, I checked to see if there were any new updates on the Iran-Israel situation. And of course, now I'm not falling for this like I did with Ukraine and Russia. But of course, the big headline was, oh, Iran signals that it's ready to stop this conflict and go back to the table and negotiate a peace deal and sign off on the no nuclear, arrangement. I'm not so quick to jump to that, because when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, how many times have we heard there's going to be a peace deal? There's going to be a peace deal. They're going to sell us, minerals, and we're going to back down, and this conflict's going to be over. Russia is going to decide to end it. Ukraine's going to decide to end it. Everybody wants peace. There's still not peace. They're still fighting. Russia continues to move forward in Ukraine. Zelensky continues to cry because we're not all giving him every single penny that we make. And I have a hard time believing that Iran is ready to throw in the towel right now when they haven't even brought out their entire arsenal. So, and not only that, but they were just dragging the Houthis and the Hezbollah into it yesterday. I don't see things simmering down quite that quickly, but we'll see how it all plays out. We'll have a lot more to talk about tomorrow. We'll talk about any updates on this Vance Boelter situation. Dottie says, tomorrow, let's talk about the flip flop of illegals being rounded up. You know, Dottie, we can talk about that really quick right now. I mean, I have to go to work, but I don't have to do it at this very second. You know, is there a flip flop? I don't see it as a flip flop. And I'm glad you brought that up. I know Charlie Kirk made a post on X that said, look at Trump's statement. Now we're going to start rounding up all illegals. And you guys may not remember this, but I talked about this actually on Friday because I had already seen the memo, what was going to happen. And Donald Trump, what it is he's sending ICE, he's expanding their role in sanctuary cities, but he's also doubly trying to protect the illegals that are working in farms and construction. And he's talking about coming out with some type of a fast track process or some other type of asylum, claim they can make if they work in the agriculture or if they work in construction. And I haven't heard that talked about a lot, but that is something that he is considering and wanting to do. He believes they're necessary within our agriculture area and necessary within construction. So we'll see how that pans out. But in the meantime, all that Donald Trump is doing, and we talked about this on Friday, he is upping the ante. He's sending and concentrating ICE raids into the sanctuary cities because guess what? If you're in this country, you're here illegally and you're a criminal, where are you going to go? You're going to go to a sanctuary city because they're going to protect you. And I didn't personally read anywhere where Donald Trump said that they're going to start rounding up all illegals, but that is what Charlie Kirk, talked about. And maybe he knows something that I don't know, but the memo just said that they were going to concentrate on these sanctuary cities and that I do think, and we've always known from day one, Donald Trump has always said that first we're going to concentrate on the criminals. Once we have concentrated on the criminals, we're going to move to a situation, and it's coming up. I believe I heard the timeline was August, sometime towards the end of July and August, where they were going to start potentially offering rewards. And people deny that and they say that's not true. But I heard that at the very beginning, that was a possibility that rewards might be issued if you call in tips and so on. But they've always said right around July, August, they're going to expand and they're going to start arresting and deporting just your regular illegals that are working and doing their thing and not necessarily criminals. So it's going to happen. And Todd said Iran is not interested in peace. I agree. And Dottie, we'll talk more about that tomorrow. I'm going to do some more research on that. But from what I understand, they are going to be concentrating on still picking up criminals in the sanctuary cities and then still moving to that phase as planned around July, August, where they start picking up, anyone who is in the country illegally. And of course, that's the goal because we know that Democrats are going to use these people to vote in the next election. We know that's going to happen. So whatever happens, we have to make these deportations before the next round of elections. And Tammy, there should be no sanctuary cities. There absolutely should be no sanctuary cities. I agree with you completely. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. I guess it's time for me to run. It's a podcast. It's okay if I go over, as long as I don't have to rush out and run to work. But we will talk tomorrow more about the situation in Iran and Israel. We'll talk more about Vance Boelter. I don't know why I can't say his name right. I can't say anyone's name right today. I have no idea what is wrong with me, but there is definitely something wrong. And we'll talk about that maybe more tomorrow too. Hopefully I'll snap out of whatever it is. But I do hope you guys have a really good day. I got to get to work, but I hope you guys have a fantastic time. I will see you all tomorrow. If you guys hear anything, I don't know, definitely let me know, but we'll catch up at that time. Hope you guys have a good day. I'm Tabitha